Hello everyone, and Dennis Diefenbach from the QA company. I'm going to present you the EU Knowledge Graph. It is a graph that we set up at the European Commission in the last 1.5 years. And we are heavily relying on Wikibase. So I hope that I can give you some insights about how to deploy a Wikibase instance in real production. And I hope also that I can give you some insights as European citizens, if you are European. So the outline of the talk, I will briefly speak about Wikibase, just because it's the first talk in this session. So I hope that everyone is then on track on what Wikibase is. I will speak a lot about the EU Knowledge Graph, about a project that is using the EU Knowledge Graph, which is called Cohesio, and then some conclusion. So what is Wikibase? So this here is the article of Wikidata about the European Union, and I assume that everyone knows Wikidata. And Wikibase is basically the software that runs Wikidata. So all the software components that are used in Wikidata are basically what is called Wikibase. And we got a nice new website I saw just this week, I guess. And the question is, why does someone want to use Wikibase? And at the Commission, there are mainly three reasons. First of all, one would like to have a graph that has a similar experience as Wikidata, because it's an experience that many people like, and it is very well designed from the UI and also technically. And another reason is that in this graph that we would like to set up locally, we would like to ingest data that probably would not be accepted by Wikidata, because it is more commission data or data about the union. And the third reason is that we would like to have full control of the ontology. So we would not like to have this review process by the community to create new properties. And we also don't want that some items or some properties are touched by the community, because they are important to then feed some application. And I think these are reasons that basically drive also other people to set up a Wikibase, which is a side of Wikidata to basically manage and ingest data. Okay, so the EU Knowledge Graph is exactly what? It is a structured repository that basically collects data about the European Union. It is accessible under knowledgegraph.eu. It looks like this. It is a typical MediaWiki installation with basically Wikibase as an extension, and you have all the functionality of Wikibase. So let me first describe what Wikibase offers. First of all, a user-friendly interface. Now he's loading some pages, I guess. Okay, so this here is now the article of the European Union, unfortunately in German. Okay, which is basically Q1 in this Wikibase. It is in Wikidata is Q400 something, but in this Wikibase it is Q1. We have a graph structure. So this here is all the things that are related to the European Union. This is also something that comes out of Wikibase. We can organize data as a graph. It can be queried, so we get a query endpoint for free. This here is now also on the EU Knowledge Graph. This looks like Wikidata, but it is not. Here we are asking about all countries in the European Union by population. It can be edited both by humans and by bots. So basically, there are non-expert users that can access this knowledge and edit it, but also we can access it programmatically. It scales well. Wikidata is one of the biggest knowledge graphs that we know about. And so if we would like to have large knowledge graphs, we can do this with Wikibase. It is multilingual, as you probably know. And also very important, and which is rather rare, is that we have a full track of the history. And this is very important in a knowledge graph, but also very rare. So we know always who edited what. Here we have a bot that is editing some things, and there are comments attached, and all these things are very important. What is currently inside the EU Knowledge Graph? The EU Knowledge Graph contains information about European institutions, European countries, capital cities, head of states, directorate generals, which are something like the ministries of the European Commission. It contains information about buildings that are occupied by the European Commission. And it contains also over 1 million projects which are founded by the European Union across Europe. This year is a project in Czech Republic, and yes, we see many information. I will come back to this a bit later. We have also 340,000 beneficiaries of EU-funded projects, which are companies or organizations across Europe. And also another part of the data, it is not, maybe it looks a bit far away, but you see how heterogeneous it is. It is about linked data solutions, which are basically deployed at the European Commission and in different ministries. And it is a repository to keep track of these solutions. I am now going to describe how we import data in the graph. Just to give you an overview, it's a very standard import process, but maybe also something that is rather unusual. So I hope it is interesting. So we start from any type of structured data. Here we have this JSON object, which is describing a building. And this JSON object exists inside of the Commission, but probably it is not very accessible, especially by non-technical people. So what we do is that we first model the data. So we would like to import this building. So we need the concept of buildings, of office. We need some properties like the address, the opening hours, or the occupant. And what we do is that whenever possible, we go to Wikidata and we check if one of these concepts or properties are available, and we import them into the knowledge graph, and we use to model the data. So this here is now the concept of office, unfortunately in German, because somehow the Chrome configurations are that I'm German and I'm okay. Anyway, so we import the concept of office. This here is Q244,000, and especially there is also an external link to Wikidata. So this here is the corresponding Wikidata entity, and basically it is the same entity. It is copied over to this knowledge graph. This here is the occupant, the property for the occupant. And also what we also do, which is very important, we also always keep external identifier to the original source, so that when the original source updates, we can basically transfer this data. The data, we always import the data using PyWikibot. It's a bit programmatic. It's more for programmers, but we are more tech people handling the data. And at the end, we have this, instead of having this JSON object, we have this nice Wikibase entry, which says that this here is a building, that this here is an office with the coordinates, and everyone basically can understand and access this data. Yes, that's what I just said. Okay, so another important part is how to keep the data fresh. So basically, data evolves over time, and it is important to basically keep it always up to date. So for entities imported over from Wikidata, so this here is in Wikidata Italy, it's Q38, and in the knowledge graph, again, it is loading, it's a bit slow. It is another entity. It is Q15. So these entities are linked. There is this external identifier that I showed before, which is this Wikidata QID. And basically, we have a process that is checking all changes in Wikidata. It is running every 5 minutes. And if there is a change in Wikidata, this change is transferred to the Wikibase. And this is done for all entities that are basically shared between Wikidata and Wikibase. And this also means that part of the knowledge in the EU knowledge graph is in fact maintained by a Wikidata community. which is really cool. And a concrete example is, for example, this concept of office. So we do not want to reinvent this concept of office. We know that it is in Wikidata, and maybe there is a Hungarian person that goes to Wikidata, adds the name of office in Hungarian, and then we want also to have this in the knowledge graph, and there is this process that basically takes care of this. So I said many times that basically we copy entities from Wikibase, and also we hold them in sync. And for doing this, we developed a library, which is Wikibase sync. It is the most near thing is Wikibase import. This is a Wikibase Wikimedia extension that basically allows to import an entity from Wikidata to Wikibase. So it is very similar to Wikibase import, but it has two main differences. The first one is that it is using a PyWikibot, which is important because basically to import an entity from Wikibase using Wikibase import, you need access to the machine itself. While with Wikibase sync, anyone external to the Wikibase, which has the rights to access to the Wikibase, can make this edit. And also the other important difference is that in Wikibase import, you import the entity once and then it is done. While with Wikibase sync, we really can basically check. We see a change in Wikidata, for example, a property is added, and then we see that we make a difference between the local copy and the one in Wikidata. We see a property was added, and then we just add the new property to the entity in the Wikibase. And it is quite a simple tool, but still there is a lot of code around it, and it is very important in many of our workflows. And it is open source, so you can find it under the GitHub account of the QA company. It's called Wikibase Sync. So we use it a lot. It is not used in other Wikibase projects currently. If you need it, you can give a look. We started documented it. I'm not saying it is perfect, but we would help out if someone is interested. Which are the services that we provide around Wikibase? So we have data exports. They are available under data.linkedopendata.eu, and they basically look like the exports of Wikidata. So also here we try to mimic most of the infrastructure so that it is familiar to people that basically visit the EU Knowledge Graph. We have a query service, which is the query service offered by Wikibase, so you can basically access all the data in the EU Knowledge Graph using a query service, which is familiar to you because it is used also in Wikidata. It has all the widgets and everything what you are aware of. And we also offer a question answering system on top of this graph. So for example, you can ask buildings by DG Connect, and what we basically do is we try to construct out of this natural language request a Sparkle query that gives back the answer. And in this case, you can explore the buildings in different dimensions. You can ask something like, who is the president of France, or who is the director of DG Connect? And all these data is basically coming from the EU Knowledge Graph and allows to access it more from a non-expert user perspective. And we have also integrated this in a chatbot. So we have experimented with Doris, which is a little assistant. And if you ask how many inhabitants has the EU, then we reply this, which is basically using question answering technology and which is fetched from the EU knowledge base. Okay, so now I would like to describe you one of the largest part of the EU Knowledge Graph, and also one of the main use cases of the EU Knowledge Graph, which is cohesion. And I hope this is interesting both for people that are in the Wikibase community, but also for European citizens. So basically, cohesion aims of giving transparency on how money is spent that is in the budget of the European Union. It is about EU cohesion policies. So basically, it works more or less like this. The European Union has a lot of budget, and around 30% of it which is 350 billion euros, are spent in these cohesion policies. So basically, the European Union sets up some rules and sets up some directions. For example, the Green Deal is to basically foster projects that help with the reduction of CO2, but it can also be transport or other domains. So they set up some programs, some rules to spend the budget of the European Union. This money is distributed to the member states, and the member states are in charge of putting in place projects, financing projects to fulfill these goals. And the countries are then implementing these projects, and they have to report back to the Commission how they spend it. In particular, they have to say where it was spent, how much they spent, for which initiative was spent, and also for which particular axis this money was spent. Yes, maybe this I skip. It's more or less what I described. And the problem is a bit that the countries, when they report back, they basically have Excel sheets or CSV files, and they publish this data on websites, but this data is difficult to access by citizens. And it is also it is quite heterogeneous. It is in different languages, it is in different schemas. So what we did in this cohesion project is we want to aggregate all this data, all these projects, and make them accessible by citizens easily, so that citizens basically can discover how the money of the Union is spent. This here is a typical project imported in the Wikibase. So it is a project in Poland. Here we have the title of this project. The original title was in Polish. We know where it is contained in, that it is a cohesion project, that it was financed by the Union, that it costed 1 million zloty, which is 240,000 euros. How much of this was paid by the Union, how much it was paid by other third parties, when it started, when it ended, who is the beneficiary of this money, and in which of these priority axes that are defined by the Union this money was spent. There is also a summary, which is originally in Polish, that we translated in English, and there is an external identifier to the project number that was financed by the Union. We enrich all this data, we translate everything to English, we compute from the postal code or the geographic location, the geo coordinates, we compute the region in Europe, and we also try to link the beneficiaries to Wikidata. And this is really, really cool. This is very cool for Wikidata editors, because I think in this example, you can see how powerful is the data that basically Wikidata editors provide every day. So let me show you this example. This is a project in Czech Republic, and this beneficiary in the original data is indicated as Lovokemie AS. And for some reason, there are a lot of companies, Czech Republic companies, that were imported in Wikidata, and in particular also this Lovokemie. So maybe I switch. How do I do this? Okay, because now it is in English, but okay. So and one important thing, so this is now data that is coming from Wikidata, but one important thing is that there is here this parent company, which is Agrofert. And this Agrofert company is basically a company which is owned by the Prime Minister of Czech Republic. And this was a big scandal at some point, because the Prime Minister of Czech Republic, which is a pretty rich man, has many companies, and in particular it owns this company, which has many subsidiaries, and this is all data which is in Wikidata, and many of them are beneficiary of EU funds. So basically, by combining the data of the Union with the data of Wikidata, by making this link, one can detect, for example, things like this, where there are companies that are basically receiving funds from the Union by creating sub-companies, which is not clear from the original data. So, of course, Wikibase is nice. It's accessible also by non-expert users, but it is not accessible for every citizen. So basically, we constructed a website on top of this Wikibase instance. And here you see, for example, all projects that are financed in Poland. You can explore them by region. Then you see the list of projects. This here is one of these projects. Now everything was blocked. Okay. And all this data is coming from the Wikibase. In fact, if you go here to this edit button, you will re-find this project in the Wikibase that we have just shown. And you can search about projects nearby your location, and you can also explore the projects by different dimensions, like the countries, the regions, over keywords, etc., etc. So the goal of Cohesio is really to make to show to citizens how this money is spent by the union. And also, Wikibase is a very important architectural element in all of this. Okay, so to summarize Cohesio, so basically what we have done is that we integrated structured data from different sources, which are all the data provided by the member states, in a uniform data model. We have enriched this data in various ways, either by translating or by computing geocoordinates or by linking the beneficiaries. And we have made this data accessible by EU citizens. So the project is still in a ramp-up phase. So we are in a production scenario, but the website will be officially launched in the first quarter of 2022. To conclude the presentation, we have shown how Wikibase is basically serving as an infrastructure for the EU knowledge graph. I have shown you what is currently inside the EU knowledge graph, which data we have ingested, how we maintain this data fresh, and which services are offered around it. And we have also shown a concrete use case, which is Cohesio, which basically is highly relying on Wikibase. I would like to thank the Doris team at DG Connect, knowledge management team at DG Regio, Wikimedia Deutschland, and also all the Wikidata editors, which basically insert all this great data every day. And I'm happy to answer some of your questions. Thank you very much. I think some people are muted. Georgina, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Dennis. There are indeed some questions in the chat and in the Etherpad. Maybe I can read some of them out and you can answer them for us.
Sure.
Yeah. So how complete is your knowledge graph when it comes to the EU institutions and agencies?
On this part, we are still relying mostly on Wikidata, but we have inserted some data, and also in fact, Wikidata is pretty complete with respect to this, so we don't have so much additional data. But what we would like to do is that to push this additional data that we have back to Wikidata, because we think this is data that is relevant also for everyone. So this is data of interest for Wikidata.
Another follow-up question, I think this is also from Jan, is about the license. What license does the data have?
This is a good question. We would need someone from management perspective. I think I will clear this up internally and also make this more clear on the website, because I'm myself not 100% aware of it because of the data. Yeah, sorry, I skipped this question. I'm not knowledgeable.
Okay. And maybe we have time for one last question. What is your experience of importing scripts and tools written by volunteers for Wikidata?
Sorry, to import scripts?
What is your experience of importing scripts and tools written by volunteers for Wikidata?
I don't fully understand this question. So which script? You mean entities that are in Wikidata imported through scripts? Is this the question?
The writer of this question might have to clarify here what exactly was meant with this.
Hi, that was me. I don't mean the data that you've imported, I mean the tools and the gadgets. So on Wikidata, we have lots of user scripts to make editing easier. And I wonder whether you imported any and how you found the process.
So I'm still not 100% sure about the question. So maybe what I can say is, for example, for this, I said that there are many companies of Czech companies that are imported in Wikidata, and these are generally...
Sorry, I'm not talking about data.
Okay.
I'm talking about the tools and the gadgets that we use in Wikidata.
Okay, but these tools and gadgets, so they are installed in Wikidata, but we generally do not. So we do not make use of them in the EU Knowledge Graph. So what we generally use to import is just PyWikibot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and also in general, Wikibase currently doesn't offer all the gadgets and tools that are available in Wikidata. So they are available as extensions, and not all of them are adapted for Wikibase. And if you take the Docker instance, which is provided by Wikimedia Deutschland, you will only have a couple of these gadgets and tools. You will not have the full Wikidata ecosystem yet.